In this video I have a Philips television. I'm not sure exactly what model this is. They're usually a 14 CF something. Always knew them as a CF1 because they have a CF1 chassis in it. It actually says CF1 on the front here. That's probably another reason. Got a little tuning tool in there that you pull out and flip around. Put in each tuner. I don't think there's any band switches. It's just a continual tuning thing. And you've got to put it back in. Yeah, depending if you face a little bit on it up or down, it turns the automatic fine tuning on and off. Contrast, brightness, colour, volume there. One of the main problems with these is those volume controls used to go. They've got quite a long shaft in there to a little trim pot type thing. And they were not available a long time ago. I think even by the mid-90s or something you couldn't get them as a part. But if you get really desperate you can, assuming you have an old chassis or something, take the ones from the contrast, brightness, etc. I think that was about a 4.7K and they were 2.2s or something. I think you had to put a resistor in line, but then it sort of ended up with quite a bit of the volume range at one end that came on a bit quick, but at least it worked because they were pretty common for failing and getting more than just scratchy. They'd actually drop out and stuff, or you'd have to fiddle with them to get the sound. The other problem, which is common with them, which is the problem with this one, is a faulty PTC. We'll see if this one still looks bad. But I have looked at this before. I'll see if I can find the old video of what it looked like when I first switched it on. But I've since actually ordered the bits for it. Oh, here it comes. It's so quiet I can't even hear it. Normally hear a bit of squeal. That actually looks alright at the moment still. I demagnetized it. It was all kind of purpley patches and stuff. Let's put the test pattern generator. I would have thought with the amount of moving around its stuff it's had since then it would possibly be faulty again. That's got a bit close to tune into something. So we've got an on-screen display. Oh, there it is. A little dodgy, but somewhere around there maybe. It's a green line, so if you lose this tool you're kind of stuffed as well. You've got to, I think I've seen people shove cotton buds or something in there. So red screen is the way to tell. And it's got a little bit of purple there, but not too bad. Usually you'll find a lot more patches of purple and green. So yeah, that's the old one, which was what number? You basically just unsolder it. Or you don't even have to unsolder it to find out what it is. 98011. So they usually have a number on them, 5-digit number. I think that's the original Philips 2322662. 98011, but it's usually just those last ones. If you go to somewhere like Wagner, PTC 14, which is a 96011, slightly different case on it. Actually, it's a 96211 they've sent me, so a lot of them are the same thing. So I'll put that in there. That should fix that issue. And I have already gone over the other issue. These sets do get dry joints, particularly on the chopper transformer and the power supply. I'll have a quick look at that as well. That should always be gone over on these TVs, because otherwise they're guaranteed to start playing up sooner or later and having intermittent power or something like that. I think some of the rails can drop out and cause other issues because there's several power rails coming out of that transformer from memory. And I guess should have a quick look at the back as well. It is a 14 CF 1014/75 or model number CJ415. The other one's a type number, made in Singapore. I didn't bother cleaning the dust out of it by the look of it. Thinner picture tube. Big old tuner. I think the power switches used to go in these as well. Like most Philips. got one of those long thin speakers like the CTO, I think it was, I need a speaker for. What is it, 25 ohms here? I thought they were a bit of a weird one. A34 JRD00X tube in it. But generally I don't think the line outputs or anything went in these. They may have occasionally. They're one of the less likely to die Phillips, I think. And there's a little tab you press there. And then we can slide this up. Completely there, volume control, you've got to be a bit careful of that. Sticking out the front there, and all the little tuning bits that they've got little pull out designs so you could pull them out and wind them. And the PTC, oh there it is, 3292 I think's the part number. Isolated power supply, you can see that band around there, optocoupler, transformer. They even put out like a danger label on the bit. But that is where our chopper transformer hides, primary and secondary. Just a matter of lifting these covers off. Where is it? There's another one there. I've already done these if I'm not mistaken. But we'll have another quick look. As I say, you should do that with every one of these sets. They're always as dry as. And often it'll cure into any intermittent problems. So there's a row of pins, this square box, and there's another row of pins on the other side. Should be done as well. I think it's mainly these secondary ones go. Other thing I always do is this, I think that's 2 vertical outputs and 1 horizontal output transistor on this aluminium heatsink. They're always bound to cause some trouble with the dry joints. And just generally check around it. Line output transformer, looks like I might have done some of that. Though I'm seeing another one that might need doing there. Oh no, it's alright. Just where it's been resoldered hasn't gone right to the edge of that one. But yeah, that looks a little dodgy looking, but that was just the old solder. And I don't think there was much else, just check the chips and stuff for dry joints. Like most Phillips, most of the solder joints aren't nice, bright, shiny ones. They're more dull looking. Seems to be something to do with the processes they use for wave soldering. But yeah, I think that all that's been pretty well looked after. So I can put that cover back in. Yeah, a couple of little metal pins, that's right, going little slots in the board. Push it down and into the solder. But did many of these sets back in the day. Used to buy a lot of second-hand ones on, they were very common TV. And it's usually always the same sort of things, dry joints in the power supply, often the PTC was gone as well. A lot of these old TVs, people just sort of ran them until they often had multiple faults. Little ones that didn't stop it working completely, but eventually they got sick of it and would often buy another one rather than getting it fixed for some reason. But these were getting a bit obsolete in the 90s and stuff, since they didn't have AV on them. But still pretty easy to sell if you kept your prices reasonable. And I did fix up a lot of these and sell them. And that's why I know about the pots and stuff, because that could be an issue. I think the CTO chassis or something also had these little pots in it. You've got to take this plastic bracket off to get them out. So there's our PTC. Sometimes just bend the pins a little bit so it doesn't drop out again. And replace that. Sometimes they'll go and blow the fuse. Most of them, I think this is one of them. Yeah, it's got the rattles. It's just blown the bit inside. Sometimes that bit will actually take the fuse out when it blows, because it just goes off quite violently. Draws quite a bit of current. But I assume at some stage when the TV's switched on and it's cold, it just, yeah, the current rushes in and it's enough to pop the thing. Maybe moisture gets into them or something. They are a kind of carbon type device, and it's usually that bit that blows. I guess we can maybe even have a look at it just like a disc. Now I think, what's the story? Do we have to make sure? Yeah, usually got to line all this stuff up again. Doesn't just come through like you'd hope. You often got to poke these little red things, try and get them in position because they love to catch. You may have to push that little bit back out again. And this still doesn't want to come. There we go. Then you got to make sure the volume comes in, because that's trying to miss the hole as well. I think even the headphone socket. Finally got it, I think. It should go in until the board clips. If you do enough of them, it becomes quite easy, but when you haven't done one for a while, they're a bit of a fiddly one. I guess before we put it back together, give it a check. I heard it go clunk, but they are, yeah, very quiet TV as far as the horizontal. Assuming it's still running. Ah, that's better, that's the one. So there's a lot of random side bears there. We do still have a little bit out at the top. But if you leave it off for 5 minutes and try again. But that should get that one all going again. And I do actually have an RGB modded version of one of these, which were very rare. And it looks like it was used in a school, probably on a BBC computer or something. They had a lot of modified twin tuner rank arenas made by NEC that were RGB modded, I believe, as well as AV modded. But they must have had a bit of an old one out with the Philips. Probably bought one later on or something, and that was one on the market with AV. That's one of the white case versions of these. I think most of these were in the silver case, but they did make a couple of colour variants, I think. Not sure if they ever made a red one of these. They made a red one of the CTO chassis or CTXA or something. I did have one of those at one stage, which I wish I kept it away because it's quite a good looking TV. Not sure if that re-clunked then. I think it might be a little out in the purity there. It's just ever so slightly out, so possibly the yoke needs a little bit of a tweak. But I think that's about all I'll do with this one for the moment. At least it's finally running again. I guess we can see if we can pop this thing open and have a look. Just prise them open, and yeah, it's a double disc. Yeah, that one's blown to bits in there, blackened. Hopefully that comes up on the camera, but that was the other bit. 3-pin thermistor would have that, 2 little discs. That's the other one. So I guess if we save that, we could find another blown one and probably fix it with that bit, if you got desperate. But normally these were not that expensive and easy to replace, so we just didn't even think twice, because how, you know, obviously with a customer job or something, you don't know how long that one's going to live before that goes pop. But that's all that's inside them. Usually a handful of broken bits. 2-pin thermistors only had one of those discs in them. I actually got a refrigerator that the motor starter was one of those things. I think it went about 2-3 years and blew some Mexican part in there. I thought, oh well, it looks like a TV part. Just to get it going, I'll pull, I think, like an old 2-pin Rank Arena type one, apart because I had some new old stock of those, put the bit in it, and it's still going now, sort of 20 years later or something, on that TV part, and seems to run fine. The motor starts up nicely. Obviously once it warms up a bit, it cuts the power to the start winding. So they were used in other things, as I found, but that was an old, like early 80s or 1970s PTC, so probably go forever. Those ones used by NEC and stuff, square black ones, pretty much never failed. Philips, along with their line output transformers, did have a lot of thymistors that blew all the time, very common thing. Power switches are very common in them. So they certainly kept the repair industry going, but not so good if you're a consumer. But that's got that little set going. It's only an RF only. So some stage I'll get onto that RGB one. I started doing a video on it, but I think I couldn't work out, something's a bit different in it. I couldn't work out which line they were using to switch the chip or something. Even though it's got a standard TDA chip in there that you normally have blanking on it, I think they switched it somewhat differently through the, I think they've got a switch to switch to AV or something, a mechanical switch on the back. And I couldn't for the life of me see where the line was on the circuit, but I read it. Later on I went back to the manual and read the description, and I think it actually tells you how it does it. But we'll get onto that sometime. I think that set actually runs fine, but it's just interesting the way they've set up the RGB input. In theory, this one could be modded, was why I was sort of interested in it. If you can make these sets RGB, it's probably much better use for them. So since they're not live chassis, they're fine for doing that. But how many of these are still floating around out there, I don't know, because a lot of them, like I say, would have been chucked out just because they were RF only. But if they're RGB moddable, suddenly they're a better TV. And interesting, the other one I noticed has a darker phosphor in the tube. So maybe they did that for the monitor purpose. I think the later Philips might have darkened them down a bit as well. But anyway, that's that one all going. That's about all that really goes wrong with these TVs. They're usually a pretty simple one to get going. Possibly if you had dry joints on the horizontal output, you might have a blown output transistor or something like that. Get a feeling I changed a few in these, but generally they were pretty reliable in that department. I think it was mainly the power supply dry joints, PTC, and yeah, volume controls going scratchy or outright dropping in and out. Seemed to be a thing with them, probably depending how harsh people were on them. Maybe people that used them a lot or bumped them or something, because it wouldn't take much to bump one of these and damage one of those little trim pots in there. And yeah, I think other than that, they're pretty reliable little telly. Maybe the odd tuner died in them or something, but generally very reliable little sets. So that's it for this one, so thanks for watching.